do the right thing at the right time. So, and these were just some of the areas of the brain that we focused on: his frontal lobe and his vestibular system. Believe it or not, this has a lot to do with anxiety and a lot of the meltdowns. This is why a lot of loud, crowded places actually cause anxiety. It's actually an ear canal issue more than anything. If you don't think that your ear canals are connected to your kind of fight or flight part of your nervous system, if you're sitting in a chair right now, lean back a little too far and then catch yourself, almost fall, and then notice what your heart's doing. Bump, 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 bump. So again, these are reflexes, and a reflex is stronger than our thoughts. His cerebellum was having trouble too. Actually had autoimmunity to it, had autoimmunity to several different parts of his brain. And then we had to focus on his brain stem, things like his pupils and things like that. So no, the ear tubes are fine, but these are ear canals. So if we sense moving our ears, our head and neck, and this is actually a lot of child development, because gravity is the one thing that we were all meant to have in common. So I can't just, so what I'm, not to sound mean, I'm not just going to say, hey, this is a good supplement to get rid of metals. The reason I said you have to do the right thing at the right time, I've lost count of how many moms have told me their kid got worse after doing like a metal chelation or something. So you have to make sure a child's ready to do it. And it depends typically what they need. What metals are going on where, what organ are we talking about, what metals are we talking about, and sometimes we have to look at genes. But I got to meet them. I was doing a seminar, and I was talking about Lyme disease or something. Anyways, they were close by, and they said, we'd love to see you. And just so you know, I've been doing things on Zoom for like before COVID, so a long time. I invented doing functional neurology on Zoom, and I'm not exaggerating that. I was like the first one to do this stuff on the internet. So I got to meet them, and he's like up in front of the, all these other doctors during our lunch break, just screaming into the microphone like, I am Captain Underpants. And she literally turned at me and she said, you get to see my dream. It used to not be like this. And, to continue that quote, she said, he wouldn't have even gotten in the car. He wouldn't even gotten out of the car. Because this was back to the meltdowns and things like that. So, but that's where, I always give credit where it's due. This is a picture of a hardworking mom. I partner only with, super awesome people, I like to think. But why only some kids, there is a genetic thing, and sometimes we have to look at that. So a lot of people will say autism is genetics, and that's true. That's true. There's a family, usually, connection, but I would say it's more autoimmunity than anything. Again, most kids are autoimmunity. A lot of the times, the first thing I usually start asking parents when they're like, yeah, my kid's on the spectrum, I just say, do you or your husband, does anybody know if they have autoimmunity in the family? Like, oh yeah, mom's got RA, or, type 1 diabetic for a cousin, or we're like, there it is, there's that one. And I look at genetics a little differently. Like I see kids with, the SHANK1, FN1, stuff like that. So we'll see kind of those, Fragile X syndrome, those sorts of things. We're looking at more like, MTHFR, vitamin D, dopamine receptor site activation. So we start looking at genes that we can influence. Not to sound mean, but a lot of these genetic tests that people have run, we can't actually change that genetic expression. But with certain testing, we can look at how those genes are expressing themselves, which actually I'll touch on a little bit with this one. So this is a mom. Her son is 19 at the time when I first met her, and he is 6'3" and a little over 200 pounds. So pretty big kid, big diapers, a lot of poop. And she told me on her first call, I knew I'd be changing diapers for the rest of my life. Well, not on the first call. But, so anyway, so her son's 19, and so she's already done it, right? Anyways, this mom has autoimmunity. That's what I'm helping her for. I said, do you want me to help your son? And we start talking. She's like, I've been told it's too late. It's just going to be this way forever. And, have y'all ever heard that? Like, been told, like, oh, it's just too late, or it's always going to be like this? Um, and I just said, well, they said your autoimmunity was always going to be that way too, and not that, so I was helping her. She had rheumatoid arthritis as well. And she was off her medications. So I was like, well, they told you you're always going to be on your medications, and here you are. You're like not getting an injection once a month. So not to sound mean, what did they know? Are you going to let somebody tell your kid what they're capable of? Like, I wouldn't do that. So anyways, I said, let's kick that negativity. Let's focus on creating health, right? That's really what we want to do, is create health. Because the environment that made a child hurt or sick, that's not the environment that we can be in to heal. So that's really when we start running some of these tests and looking at their nervous system and evaluating it, we're just seeing what are these environments doing. So here we can start to look at a cellular environment through a p-test. Now this is a pitfall of functional medicine, because this becomes supplement, 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 supplement. And some kids are just taking like 40 pills a day, basically. But we can see cells are having trouble making energy. This is huge. So we've heard of mitochondria, right? Can somebody just say yes, mito or something like that, just so I know we all know what mitochondria are, correct? So, okay. So if we think of a mitochondria, for a heart cell, for example, so a mitochondria is considered an engine. It's what makes energy inside of our cell. Heart cell has about 10,000 mitochondria. A neuron in the basal ganglia, which that's the part of the brain that helps with stuff like pandas, echolalia. Anyways, those neurons have 250,000 to 2 million mitochondria. So when we think of the energy demand of the brain on a cellular level compared to on a cellular level of the heart, a brain requires like 20 times the amount of energy than a heart cell just to keep pumping all the time. Our neurons require so much energy. So when we start looking at this and we're like, hey, these engines aren't really making the car go, that's big. That's big. So that's huge. But what we don't want to do is like, hey, here's your CoQ10 and just start giving supplements to make the engines better, because we'll get into it, but it's called the cell danger response. The cells are not making a mistake by having trouble making energy and doing these things. They're trying to make it through the environment that's threatening those cells. And the number one thing that I find with kids, well, it depends on what we find, right? A leaky gut can cause it, mold toxins, metals, like candida can do it, parasites, basically all the stuff I test for. So it's a real long list. Anyways, we realize, hey, their cells aren't making a mistake by making them tired or having trouble connecting or something like that. If you get the flu and you get tired, you're not like, oh, stupid body making me rest. You're like, no, your body's conserving energy to deal with the flu. So that way, when you're done with the flu, you can go back to living. It's just the environment of these cells is not changing. So now their cells are kind of stuck in first gear and they can't get to fourth gear or something like that. So there'll be a recording. So anyways, so we basically want to see what can cells do and not do. Can they detoxify down certain pathways? Because it's not just like, here's your detox shake and your B vitamins, here you go. To me, that's a very lazy way to go about it. And this child, for example, did not need more probiotics. The first thing I told his mom to do was like, stop the probiotics. You've been giving him probiotics for like his whole life, basically. Like, there's too many bacteria, and competition is not a good thing, even on a bacterial level. They fight. Everything fights to survive. So we ran a stool test and we see, hey, he's got stuff in his nose. He's got staph, he's got strep, he's got Pseudomonas, which these make plaque or biofilm, and they make the hardest bacteria, or they make the hardest biofilm of any bacteria they've ever measured. So we found out this child had mold too. He also had a urinary tract infection, this Prevotella copri down at the bottom, which isn't very common in males, but again, he's been in a diaper for 19 years. So for wearing, kind of a higher risk factor for that. Anyway, so as we can see just from the stool test, He's got a leaky nose. He's got a leaky bladder. These barriers can get broken. It's not just a leaky gut that we find. We find other stuff leaking all the time. I've seen kids born in mold that they have leaky lungs, like they start coughing up black stuff. It's like we really gotta get to the bottom of this a lot of the times. Oh, and I forgot to mention, not only was this child considered nonverbal, non-potty trained, he also had a thing called misophonia, which is where if he would hear a sound, he wouldn't cover his ears, he would punch the source of that sound. The sound was a woman's voice. So he would punch TVs, he would punch speakers, he would punch women. And so he's about to get kicked out of the adult care program because he's over 18. So he's out of school now, right? And every parent worries, who's going to help take care of my kid? So he's in the adult care, and they're like, look, he's beating up the women's staff. Like he's hitting the other female tenants. Like we can't have him here anymore. Like we're gonna have to make him leave. Of course, so mom's like, please don't. Anyway, so that was in his temporal lobe. That's where a lot of those emotions lie, in that part of the brain. So we had to start exercising his part of the brain too, and stuff like that. And of course, his mom sends me an email. This is back when I would still use emails for patients. Now it's a little different, but she said he had his first bowel movement in the toilet at Dad's house. If we keep reading, to me it's kind of funny. So they started taking the supplements for a month, but she only did the brain stimulation for a week before he pooped in the toilet. He's a big kid, so it was a little bit, it's like doing it, you know, it's a little bit harder than maybe taking a supplement sometimes. But I jokingly said, after we were following up on the next visit, I was just like, that extra mile that your son's brain wanted to go was like literally just an inch. Like his brain was so ready to try to get there to poop. And he did poop in different places. And I didn't share this video because his mom didn't give me, permission to share images of her son, and that's fine. But she shared a video of me, and he was dancing in the car to like Christina Aguilera, I think, either that or Britney Spears or something. But he wasn't hitting the speakers, and he was going to a bowling kind of thing for the adult care center, like a cyber bowling or electric bowling. So he didn't get kicked out of the center. He was pooping there, lost his misophonia, so he wasn't punching women anymore. So kind of a big deal. But I say, let's not wait until a child's 19. I work with kids on all ages, people. The oldest autistic person I currently am seeing, they'll turn 33 in about a month and a half. So pretty old. But as a parent, what? No one's going to know your kid better than you. So what are you seeing? What are you noticing? We got to functionally evaluate the nervous system. Do not see if they will grow out of it. Do not watch and wait. Anyone that says, well, let's just watch and wait, let's see if they grow out of it, I don't feel they truly understand how the nervous system develops. That's where I say I don't know. If you had such a severe reaction to the chicken pox, that's going to take more than just a few sentences on a webinar. Not to sound mean, but that's, to really evaluate the immune system, that takes a lot. And the immune system is super complex. I like the nervous system. It's very linear. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. We kind of just like a wiring diagram. If you know the maze, it's very straightforward. With the immune system, there's like always an exception to the rule, basically. So that can be super frustrating. But that's where, I wouldn't want to give bad advice. Not to sound mean, I don't even know your child's name. So for me to think that I would be able to give them good advice on something so severe, that's not realistic. But there's other labels too. I never focus on a label. I think that whole diagnosis thing is not the best. Plus, even if you look, even allopathic medicine admits that the diagnosis is wrong something like 39% of the time. So almost 4 out of 10 times, basically, it's the wrong label. But this was a mom, her son had ADHD, and truly some of the most ADHD I've ever seen, like literally couldn't sit still, moving the whole time, just nonstop. So we did some brain stuff while we could, real fast, like, okay, I'll show you what exercises to do. And I just asked her, what foods does he crave? She said he craves bread, he craves milk, and he craves popcorn. He has to have them. And I said, he has to give them up. A drug addict craves what's bad for them. So some of those foods, actually, if your child seems addicted to a food, that's the food they have to get rid of, especially if it's gluten, dairy, corn, or rice. Those have been shown to actually kind of bind to opioid receptor sites to literally cause addiction. So these are usually the kids that'll like throw the bread or throw the meat off the bread, and they're just like eating the bread of the sandwich, or they have to have chocolate milk, they won't drink anything else, or something like that. Like it's all or none with them. And I'll just be the first to say it. I tell parents, like, hold on, they're going to go through withdrawals. They will go through withdrawals. It is what it is. But honestly, like this mom, they tell me the same thing going through the other side, like, wow, my kid is so much more calm now. Like after we cut those foods out and the withdrawal went over, I'm like, yeah, right. But anyways, he said, after cutting out the food, he did some exercises. He wanted to feel better too. He was getting in trouble at school. He didn't want to get in trouble. He was, not getting invited to friends' houses because, he's a little too excited. So anyways, he said it used to feel like a monkey was going wild in his brain, but now he said it feels like it's adults meditating. And again, I only partner with winners. That mom, she definitely would have to be meditating in front of her son for him to know what an adult meditating looks like. And she's a health coach. So this mom is a doctor. I was going to say was a doctor. She's still a doctor. But her son had some speech delays. Started with colicky, digestion, elimination. Then it became temperamental with balance, and then verbal. He could speak, but he had a stutter, and he had poor enunciation, so he had a lot of trouble saying it. I used functional medicine, functional neurology. To me, I wanted to just show what this mom said, because that's what I want to hear from everybody. She said even 2 years later, her son is still thriving, because I truly believe if we can change the environment the body is in, then we can truly change the body and truly heal. Those are kind of some of the hurdles, if he won't eat, that's where, it just depends. Like my sergeant told me in the military, you have to choose your hard. Eventually kids will eat. They'll get hungry enough where they'll eat something. I've had parents have to do that. They're like, we just stood our ground. But it's usually not going to be easy. But anything worth having isn't really easy, right? So that's where back to my sergeant said you have to choose your hard. Like getting this child, for example, to sit still enough to cut out his 3 favorite foods that he was addicted to, and to sit still enough to try to do some of these exercises every day. It's difficult. I'll be the first to say it. If any doctor is like, hey, getting your kid to not be on the spectrum and talk and do all this stuff is going to be easy, you should probably run as fast as you can. Like I would never say anything like that. I'll be the first to say this isn't going to be easy. I like it to be simple, 8, maybe 10 minutes of exercises a few times a day, cut out a few foods maybe, take a few supplements if we can. I try to keep it simple, but it's not easy. It's autism, right? So, but to recap, we got to look at the effects of inflammation on the brain. Where is it coming from? What kind of inflammation is it? I wouldn't pour water on a grease fire, especially if most kids on the spectrum are autoimmune, which they are. Then that inflammation will have far-reaching kind of consequences. And the reason I keep saying that, like for example, one study, it was something like a little over 60% of the kids in that study with the label of autism had antibodies to myelin basic protein. You would call that MS if they were an adult. So that's the same part of the nervous system that people with MS attack. So we're like, hey, but this kid has autism. I'm like, well, it's a different part of their life too. Like things are totally different in the trajectory of developing the brain versus maintaining the connections. So anyways, we really got to look at the effects of inflammation. And that's usually where we look at the gut health and infections. I check for mold and stuff like that too if we have to. See it all the time, like all the time. I wish we didn't, but and I've run over 5,000 poop tests. I've never seen a normal first poop test, not one. So, of course, I don't have like, people with, they're like, oh, my child seems perfectly healthy. Can I just run their poop test? They're like, sure, why not? So, but that to me lets me know that there is something going on because usually we might run a lot of maybe imaging, like an MRI or something, or even blood work, and we're like, well, maybe vitamin D is a little bit low, and I'm like, yeah, but you know, like I could point at kids that don't have autism that are low vitamin D. So again, we're just finding low vitamin D, and that can help, but I haven't read that, a lack of vitamin D causes autism, like is the trigger for it. It's definitely important for the immune system though. But we got to look at genes and the cellular demand, not just give them B vitamins. And to that point, like so I review cases before I even start looking at a kid just to see what's going on, and this one child, he was given a B vitamin, then this methylation support, and then there was this other B vitamin. And I just kind of asked the mom, like, how many B vitamins does your kid need? Like 80,000% in a day? Like, I don't think that's really a lack of B vitamins at this point that we're really after, So there's typically a lot of refinement on my end too. More supplements aren't always better. We want to look at a neuro exam too, and hopefully I demonstrated how these brain-based exercises can make a difference. So functional medicine and functional neurology is cost effective. That mom whose son was over 19, she lives in Canada, so technically everything should have been paid for, but she basically bought a house with everything that she paid for out of pocket before, I kind of got my hands on them. But we want to get to the root cause, which we do right out of the gate. And honestly, a lot of parents tell me what's going on, you know. Which part of the brain is a question? Which part of the brain causes them not to connect? It's going to be different for everybody, That's why we got to do an evaluation. If it was that easy, trust me, if it was so easy as like, here's a couple brain exercises for this one part of the brain, here's this one supplement guaranteed to work, I would have said it and it would have been like a two-minute seminar. I wish, right? Oh, I wish it was that easy. Trust me. I wish it was just like take this one pill and it just goes away. But I haven't found that. I hope somebody does, but I don't think it's going to happen, at least in my lifetime. But that's where, we got to be highly actionable. And that's where, to me, the neuro rehab is necessary. And that's where I like to screen people to make sure, if we're going to cross the starting line, can we cross the finish line, Because we want to heal the brain. Like that mom said, 2 years later, everything's still fine. I think, thank God. My goal is with the last visit I have with you and your child is for y'all to be like, hey, everything's cool. And I'm like, hey, cool, see you later. Not to sound mean, or anything like that or dismissive, but I really want to like, hey, let's position the brain, get this child on the trajectory of this is how their brain is supposed to develop and their nervous system and their gut, and this is what's right for them, and just have them keep going. And no medications. I'm not anti-medication. I'm a chiropractor. I probably didn't say it, but I'm a chiropractor. Haven't been able to prescribe medications for 14 years, and I'm not anti-medications, but that's what I'd say. But, those children that I was able to demonstrate to you that, we could see them heal, there wasn't a drug involved in that. And again, I see kids with seizures all the time, so I'm definitely not anti-drugs. If the mom is like, yeah, the Keppra is what's keeping him from having 20 seizures a day, I'm the first one to say, thank God. Thank God we're not having 20 seizures a day. But on the back end, let's figure out, why is your child's brain so excited that it's just firing too much all the time? And there's a lot to that, because we always want to look for stuff, right? Yeah, but that's where, one mom, we actually found out that her daughter had parasites, and that's what was causing her seizures. Because her mom asked me, We're going over the testing, and I even said, like, I think your child has seizure or has parasites. And I was like, we'll look on the testing though. And sure enough, we saw some parasites. And then she said, is it ironic or is it weird that my daughter only has seizures on a full moon? And I said, absolutely not. That whole full moon thing and parasites is totally true. Totally true. See it all the time. But anyways, for that girl, for example, get rid of the parasites. She hasn't had a seizure since. So do you hopefully see how the right partnership can be transformative? And it has to be the right one. I, for example, have a really bad sense of humor. Like, I don't wear a stethoscope on Zoom. So if you're looking for someone a little more professional, I don't even have my patients call me doctor anymore. They usually just say, hey, Jared. I'm like, hey, what's up? When I first graduated, I was like, yo, that's doctor. But I like to be calm. I like to be relaxed because I find that's how it typically gets done. Hopefully, I can help make a difference in your child's life. And we want to do the right testing, not more testing, but sometimes the right testing. And sometimes we just have to know what we're looking at. Like, I've had parents be like, hey, can my pediatrician run this test? And I would say, nothing against your pediatrician. I see pediatricians' kids as patients. That's okay. Yeah, what's the right test? The right test is based on somebody's history. What is somebody telling me? So for example, I had this mom was like, well, my pediatrician, can they run this test? And I said, they're probably not going to for 3 reasons. Insurance is their boss. So they have to do what insurance says. Not to sound mean, but the insurance is who pays their bills. So they're going to do what insurance says. Insurance, that F8 4.0 label, not really worried about a kid with a poop test or looking at the poop test with a kid on the spectrum. Why would I spend that money? That doesn't make any sense. I say, then if they already run it, they probably would have. And then lastly is it's going to be the first one they see. A lot of the times I'll even have, I'll tell my patients, I'm like, hey, take these test results to the pediatrician the next visit. And a lot of them say it's cool, but most of the doctors say, hey, I don't look at this. I don't know what this means. And that's okay. I would appreciate somebody being honest. Because, I, for example, don't look at ultrasounds. People are like, oh, I have an ultrasound of my shoulder. Do you want to look at it? And I'm like, honestly, no, because I'm not even going to know what I'm looking at. I don't look at ultrasounds of shoulders all day long. I look at poop tests. I look at pee tests. I do neuro evaluations. So that's what I know how to do. So hopefully we had a good takeaway, and I've got a good sense, but we've probably realized what can healing do for your child. So for those of you that want to take the next steps, so here's how we can maybe get over that hurdle or that wall. So this is over the last 14 years, I've created what's called the Essentials program because it covers the essentials. These are the things that I find we have to do. So we start with that initial consultation. Each visit is an hour long. It's over Zoom. I record it. So that way if somebody's spouse or somebody can't make it, they're not left out or anything. But we start with that first visit. My intake form is very lengthy. At that visit, my goal is to see, how did your child get to today? What testing did they run? What testing did they not run? What supplements have they taken? What drugs are they on? Things like that. Have they done brain stimulation? Did it work? Did it not work? What are we looking at, Because we don't want to do, again, the definition of insanity, do the same thing twice. At that initial consultation, your child needs to be there about 5 or 10 minutes. So that way we can get through that neuro evaluation. I walk people through it real fast, and then that's when I recommend the most appropriate testing. Because what we want to do is everything's going to be customized. Here's the brain exercises you're going to do. I send videos and things like that showing you how it's done, so that way, even though I'm not there in person or you're not there in person, we have that communication, which is important for support between visits and portal access. So that way we can see what's going on, are things working, I just don't want someone to feel like they're in limbo until the next visit. We usually sit down about once a month. Well, usually over the course of 8 to 12 months is how long it takes for the program to reach its conclusion. What I pay for a test is what you pay for a test. So that way, if people know I'm recommending more testing, it's necessary. So that way we can review the results and change the direction of where we're heading. So that way we know what we need to do. So questions are so let me just, oh, sorry, I forgot. Things are, we do talk about diet. One visit alone is only going over the test results because it takes that long. It's very, like the stool test is 30 pages typically. So super long test, a lot of information there. But we have to go through it. We have to be strategic too. Back to any clinician or anyone that says this is going to be easy, I've learned over the course of doing this for several years, you kind of have to plan on a plan B. Like, Timmy doesn't like that supplement. Ryan doesn't like that gluten-free pizza that we tried or whatever. Or, Madison, wow, oh my gosh, she sees that brain exercise tool or whatever. She's just running down the hallway. And then I say, hey, okay, the price is totally worth it. I know everyone wants to know. So I'd say I am definitely the best investment on the block. So what you get is an initial functional medicine and exam. Doctors I train charge over $2,000 cash for this visit sometimes. We're going to have adequate time during visits. They're an hour, and we have to have a realistic timeline. That's why, like, if we look at fixing the gut, for example, that can sometimes take 3 or 4 months alone. It's not like this stuff happens overnight. Now, I showed things where we can notice changes. Like, hey, this change happened pretty rapidly. And I'd say, yeah, but we weren't out of the woods yet. Like, yeah, we have a 19-year-old pooping in the bathroom, but I'm still trying to get him talking and interacting with his peers. And like, we're still going, right? Everything's customized. So that it is what it is. A lot of work, but it's worth it. Support between visits. And at this point, it's proven. I've taught hundreds of doctors how to do this too. You don't have to travel. Take time off work. You don't have to guess or do this on your own. And so, without further ado, I only charge $49.99. So, insurance will not pay for this. So, the biggest questions I get, will insurance pay for it? No. The reasons why, I am not going to let insurance tell me what to do to get a child better. Back to, hey, can my pediatrician run this? Yeah, but not this test. Insurance isn't going to let them. I'm a chiropractor. Insurance would pay me to adjust your kid's back. I mean, and they might need it, maybe if I did see people in person, I'd be like, yeah, let me get their hips or something like that. Like, let me adjust your child if you're comfortable with that. But I've never seen anybody adjust autism away. In that sense, it can help. But so I just don't let some company that doesn't know really anything about how to get a kid better to help them get better. And then if people do have, HSAs can pay for it. I usually have people just use a payment plan. Most people throw it on like an American Express or something like that. And just so people can budget, if we only have to run the minimum 2 tests, it's like usually around $640 for those, and they get shipped to your house. But before we all bite off more than we can chew, I like to make sure that we're a good fit. So what I did is you should see this offer, and we can schedule a discovery call, a little 15-minute chit chat over Zoom. Your child does not have to be there. There's a questionnaire, so that way I can get a sense on how old is your child, where have they been, where do you live, things like that. For example, I see patients all over the world, but sometimes we have trouble maybe getting test kits to certain countries, maybe supplements to certain countries, things like that. So just trying to identify any logistical stuff that might get in the way of success. Traditionally, it's $150 for this call. It used to be free, but then people wouldn't show up because they think no cost means no value. But not to sound conceited, nothing's more valuable than my time. So to me, so I'm sure you can say the same thing about your time. So I just ask, don't worry, I will definitely not waste your time. Just please don't waste my time. But if you enter the coupon code BRAINIAC, just the way it's spelled, then it's 100% off. So we can have a little chit chat and make sure this is a good place. I like to I like to just focus on three things at that little short call. Can I help your child? Are you able to do what it takes? And basically, do we like each other? You know, I like to keep it very simple. We'll get complex, don't worry. We will get there. We'll start using big words, all this stuff. But that's what I find is usually if it feels like it has to be complex and confusing and swimming up the river, we're probably doing something the body is not trying to do. You know, we're forcing the body to go up a river. I like for parents to say it kind of seemed easy. They just seemed to start falling asleep, or they just started to relax, or yeah, now they're pooping every day. And we're like, cool, these foundational things. That's honestly the first things I focus on. Um, I jokingly tell parents, I know we want to get to speech and potty training and inhibition, but if we're not sleeping good every night and pooping good every day, it's going to be very hard for all that other stuff to start working because the foundation is cracked. Things that are so paramount, like our sleep-wake cycle. Everything is a slave to the sun. Even plants, every animal, everything has melatonin in it. Everything was meant to be like it's awake, it's sleep. Sun, not sun. And we gotta poop every day. We eat every day, right? Hopefully. So I just tell parents we're funny shaped Play-Doh factories. Just like when they were young, if they weren't colicky, they eat, they should be pooping. So that same thing should be applying, because I'll start working with kids, obviously, and we'll be going through stuff, and they're like, well, they poop every day, and I'm like, yeah, but I think they're actually still constipated, just because if you have 2 pounds of poop to get rid of, and you only have 1 pound that you're getting out, that's kind of a problem. You're still constipated. So after that discovery call, I say I promise that I will only recommend moving forward if I feel I can help your child. I've been doing this enough to know if I can and can't help a child at this point. Because what I never want to do is give a parent false hope. I have heard other, I've seen parents go through that, where a clinician might say, yeah, we're going to get your kid talking. And in the back of my mind, I think they said that out loud, like, we're just going to get your kid talking. Like, I've demonstrated that I've seen nonverbal children talk, but if your child is nonverbal, I would never act with that conceitedness and be like, oh, don't worry, we'll get your kid talking. I would say, we'll do everything we can. I'm going to do everything I can do to try to make sure that happens. But I would never want to give anyone false hope or anything like that. So if you have some questions, we have a little bit of time. I'm slightly over, but I tried not to. I don't, just so you know, I don't want to, I'm not going to answer any questions about specific case stuff like what to do for, parasites or candida or lead or something like that, because I feel the most appropriate answer at this point is I don't know. I have no idea what else is going on to put that picture in context. Because if all we're seeing is one piece of the puzzle, that doesn't tell us a whole lot of the picture sometimes. We have to really start looking at all of these pieces and see how does it all fit, because one piece of the puzzle can completely change the picture sometimes. So I just don't want to start, give bad advice or anything like that. And so hopefully, that would be if you go to that offer and click on that discovery call, click on book your call. You should see that button under offer, and then enter that code BRAINIAC, and then you can go ahead and get that discovery call made. Again, your child does not have to be there. It's just a quick little Zoom call to see, basically, like I was saying, can I help your child? Are we able to do what it takes as far as, follow through with diet changes? I realized, definitely a ton of kids don't swallow pills, so I'm just kind of gauging where that's at. Like, do we have to hide it? Maybe we can put stuff, make it taste good or something like that. And basically, kind of, do we get along, Do people like my laid-back attitude, stuff like that? But thank you for listening to me, having your time. I know we have a lot to do, a lot going on. It's a lot to take care of, right? So we all have kids. But thank you for your time. I look forward to chit-chatting with each of you that wanted to move forward with me, so that way we can find